they were like, why would you judge your body at any weight, like for changing shape? And stuff like that, that's just like, well, duh, like, I know.
Okay, good, because that's exactly what I was thinking when you said that. Like, do you know why she's talking to you? Hello.
Minutes ago, when I realized I had to get ready for the podcast, I stood up really quickly from my chair. I was eating an amazing sweet potato with maple syrup and chili garlic oil.
Ooh.
So fucking good. Game changer. Take notes, listeners. Anyway, I was enjoying this potato, and all of a sudden I stood up really quick, and Fang was staring at me, and I was like, Mommy's gotta work. Anyway, hi, I am... Welcome to Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where I am not your mommy. I am your co-host, Christina.
I am also not your mommy. I'm your other co-host, Lauren.
We'll try to get through a single sentence without laughing. We got to get it all out now. It's good. It's healthy.
When you said that, I was going to say, I do regularly think of and laugh at the time on the podcast when Pico and Meatball were going after each other. And I said, come sit in Mommy's lap.
At first I thought you were going to say, like, I loved it whenever Pico and Meatball were chasing each other in the background. I just thought that was so funny every time. And I was going to say, well, at least one of us does. Is it too soon?
Let's get into where you're at.
Yeah. We're on the same wavelength. Lauren, where are you at today?
Not good. Friday seems to be the terrible day for me and animals lately, because last Friday, then, I talked about I had to surrender Meatball. And this Friday, Pico had his vet appointment, and it didn't go well. 3-4 years ago or so is when they first let me know. They're like, well, he has a slight heart murmur. And that just seems to be a thing that little dogs have. And, in the last couple of years, every time I've gotten his yearly appointment, then they're like, do you know he has a heart murmur? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, it's slight, I'm not concerned about it, so you don't need to be. So I was like, okay. And so this time when I go in, I tell him about, like, listeners have heard his hacking, and last time I told them about that, they didn't think it was a big deal. And I said, like, well, it's still going on and it concerns me. And then he immediately felt, and he's like, well, his heart murmur is pretty strong. It's like, oh, you guys haven't said that in the past. And I let them, because they said that, then I let them do x-rays on him, and they did show where his heart is enlarged. It's pushing on his trachea, so that's why he does this.
Wow.
Yeah, did show it to me, because God, I apparently know fucking shit about animal anatomy.
This is not the podcast where you have to talk about that, luckily.
You're right. but I wouldn't have known. It's kind of like, it goes like heart, trachea, backbone. And
they're all like meshed together.
They're kind of like stacked on top of each other.
Okay.
So that's what he told me, is he was like, it could be worse. Here's his heart. It's pushing on his trachea. I've seen ones where they're like pushing it right up into their spine, and he has room.
Oh my God.
So I was like, okay.
I'm like crouching further and further as you're telling me this story. My shoulders are just hunched straight up.
It was the worst morning.
Oh my God.
He did tell me, like, he's not in heart failure, but he is at a point where, like, I guess if their heart is enlarged to a certain size, then they're a candidate for medication, which, hopefully will help and prevent him from being in heart failure. But, the way he talked about it was just kind of like, yeah, I want you to know, it's like, it's a much bigger concern if he were in heart failure, and he's not. But he could stay where he's at for a couple of years, or, tomorrow he could show signs of being in heart failure. We just don't know. I'm like, baby.
Goodbye. Have a nice night.
Yeah.
Here's your bill.
Right.
God.
Well, and it was it was first, I scheduled it first thing in the morning too. So yeah, it was more like, okay, let's go work.
What were the thoughts going through your head?
Well, the worst of one was the timing with having to surrender Meatball. Is I was just kind of like, well, this is what you deserve, because, you just treated pets like they're disposable, so maybe you should have none.
But you're You're doing the opposite of that, which is like paying attention to their needs and doing what's right for them.
And, it's the whole thing where it's like logical me knows that I did not just treat Meatball like he was disposable. It was a tough decision, and I came to it after a lot of consideration and everything.
And
but
Pico even more so.
Yeah.
And this is not your fault whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's just something that happens.
Exactly.
And it'll happen to all of us who have pets someday. We could be faced with similar scenarios.
Yeah, and obviously there's still like some, what if we could have done something sooner? But I, also know it's like, well, I mean, not really, unless I was just going to be, a hypochondriac pet mom and take him to the vet every month. But last year, when he had his checkup, he wouldn't have needed any of this. They said it was minor. Don't worry about it. We're not worried.
Well, it's just like people. When they start to decline, it happens fast.
Exactly.
God, how do you feel?
I mean, I at least waited until I left the vet's office to cry about it for the first time today.
Yeah.
Because it is just, it's like, I still, I'm hopeful, and I looked up a bunch of things, of course. It was like they give me the medicine that I have to give him every day. And as soon as I get home, I'm just like, I'm on Google, and I was like, does this stuff actually help? and heard, like pretty good things about that. So I'm like, it's a scary, like, you have no idea, but I hope he's one of the ones, like, for some, they said taking this medication can even, like, whatever it does can actually, like, shrink their heart size, which...
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks, science.
I know.
I mean, but he's alive today, just every day could be their last. Like, that story I told of a friend whose pet died very suddenly. Like, you never know.
Yeah, I've had friends the same way, that it's just hit them out of nowhere, and, one day they are as fine as they've always been, and the next day, yeah.
And I don't mean to say, like, be careful because it could happen any day.
No,
I'm saying, like,
but
it won't make a difference if you stress about it. And if you stress about it, it could actually cause them to pick up on that stress.
Yeah.
And worsen their health.
And I think that's the other way that I'm trying to come at it right now, too, is thinking, like, yesterday, I did not know this was the case because there's nothing he's showing. He hasn't changed in personality.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that just has me, like, hopeful, like, okay, hopefully we're okay for a little while, buddy.
So that's where you're at tonight.
Mm-hmm. Where are you at?
I'm doing the therapist thing and just seeing how long it'll be before you talk about your mental health, and then you're like, where are you at?
I think I did.
No, we just did.
Yeah.
You did. I'm sorry.
Like,
I really don't give you enough credit there. Okay, I'm sorry. It's just a bit at this point.
Yeah. It's like at this time, I think I got pretty vulnerable in my reaction. But yeah.
I guess what I meant was, if you didn't want it only to be about your dog stuff, you can, like, is there anything else you wanted to talk about? I guess that's what I meant.
Okay.
But also, if that's the only thing you want to talk about, that's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, since, it was just this morning and that's fresh, I'm just like, that's really all that's on my brain. I probably, if that hadn't happened, I would have come up with something else. But I'm just like, yeah, that's it.
It kind of eclipsed everything else. I get it. I feel really bad because I've had an okay week.
It's okay for one of us to have a better week than the other. It frequently happens the other way. So,
but like, so many of my close friends are like in a crisis right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel really bad when I don't match that energy. I guess.
Have such a hard time with that too.
Yeah.
We should do an episode on that.
I know. I was just literally just thinking. But what was I going to say? What was I just talking about?
Having an okay week for once.
Yeah. Well, okay. Something I didn't talk about recently on the podcast or at all is that I've been on Wellbutrin for a couple weeks now. Mm-hmm. I mentioned trying to get it, or any ADHD med, really, from my psychiatrist. He was very resistant to prescribe me that kind of stuff because of my addictions and my eating disorder, which, valid, but also I struggled with ADHD for 30 years without realizing I had ADHD. Mm-hmm. And, for some people, they don't need a diagnosis. Like, that's fine. And also, whatever you're experiencing is valid and all that. But it was really eye-opening for me to get a formal diagnosis.
Yeah.
And at the same time, once I made that discovery, I was like, okay, what do I do now? And if anything, I became hyper aware of it.
Yeah.
And when I had my breakdown, it just like triggered something and made it worse. And anyway, it's been really debilitating. I'm so happy to finally be on meds. And yeah, I guess that's why I've been having an okay week. I'm planning for the future, question mark.
Mm-hmm.
I painted pumpkins with my sister today.
I saw them. They're so cute.
Yeah, she painted my cats.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and, as someone who has been on that, I know that is one that is a different type of antidepressant than like SSRIs, which most people take at this point. So, those, they tend...
Most people we know, maybe.
I realized as soon as I said that how it sounded. I meant most people diagnosed with depression, but I know I made it sound like, well, most people in the world take these meds.
Most people.
Most people have a collection of meds. But the point I was going to make is that Wellbutrin is actually one that is supposed to potentially just work right away, where a lot of antidepressants have a waiting period.
By how fast I felt the effects.
Yeah.
I'm still sober from Benadryl. Yay.
Yay.
I have smoked weed a couple times.
Yeah.
And actually, it led to a really interesting conversation that I want to talk about eventually, but we need to kind of get on track. But that's okay because I was going to segue into our topic anyway.
Okay.
So, what did we talk about last week, Lauren?
We talked about... I'm like,
acceptance.
Yeah, I had the conversation in my head, and I was like, but we boiled it down to what word was it again? Acceptance. Yes.
Acceptance, denial.
Mm-hmm.
We briefly talked about what acceptance means to us and, pain versus suffering and acknowledging your core nature and where you're at presently.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you briefly in that episode talked about DBT and how you do not like DBT. And I realized listening to that episode, first of all, that was like the shortest episode we've ever put out together.
Yeah, I think both of us were just kind of, I don't know. I don't think we had a lot in the tank that night.
We don't need excuses. But to make up for that, we are still doing a movie review with Orion soon. We can't record it yet because of our scheduling. And so, Lauren, I feel like you kind of gave me this idea to kind of, how did you describe it?
Well, maybe like a year ago, we did one that, I don't know if we titled it this or I loosely just always called it Tales Out of Treatment.
Oh, treatment stories.
Yes.
Not that anyone gives a shit. God.
But I knew for that one that I had like a whole list of things to talk about, and we probably talked about half of them, and I could still go on. And I thought even like opening it up, then I think it was because I was about to go into treatment. So we kept it like solidly on that. But I was like, hey, let's talk about, if you have something about therapy, something about yours doing maybe like outpatient therapy groups, anything like that, just any sort of treatment, whether it be an inpatient, an outpatient, or whatever, just tell some stories.
All that to say, we had this episode where you announced that you were going to treatment, and it was very dramatic and heavy. And so for one of the last episodes we did before you went, we did a lighthearted treatment stories episode where we told stories from, and all that to say, that was such a long explanation. What was I going to say?
I don't know. I'm like trying to figure out like, where else does she need to go with this before we just hop in?
I know. Where do I need to go with it? Oh, what it has to do with the last episode.
Yes.
So yeah, you mentioned in that episode that we both have experiences with DBT and all that and acceptance.
Yeah.
We wanted to extend the acceptance conversation because I feel like there were a lot of things that weren't said or that we could have elaborated on. And I just want to, have fun with it some more.
Yeah.
So, Lauren, why do you dislike DBT? And could you briefly remind listeners what that is, what it stands for at least?
Yeah, DBT, it stands for dialectical behavioral therapy, which, what does that mean to you? It didn't mean shit to me when I first heard the words.
Well, dialectical is like two. So like two things at once can be true.
Oh, I didn't even think about it that hard, but that does make sense.
The amount of DBT notes I have from my treatment journals is unreal. That's another thing. We're going to be sharing maybe some journals tonight. Do you have any?
Well, I don't have journals. I had
Notes?
stories from the past.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. I feel like it's almost going to sound like too much of a buildup. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I was supposed to be talking about what it is. What?
Thank you.
We don't have focus? Who are these people?
Who are we? What are we doing here?
Yeah, but DBT is kind of like just some set ways of dealing with emotions when they're too much, like distress tolerance and radical acceptance and all of these things that you learn about through it. And that's really what it seems to be to me, is like for people that, just when you can't handle your emotions, when they feel like they're just overwhelming you, it's a way to kind of contain them for the moment or whatever you need to do.
Page 1 of my treatment binder says therapy terms, and then there's a definition for DBT. But yeah, the stuff you mentioned, mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, like emotion regulation, distress tolerance, two opposing forces existing in harmony. So yeah, it's all about like your internal reaction and like what you're doing, like internal. It's not really action based. It's about like, I don't know. Keep going.
It's I don't know. It's kind of almost like reasoning your way through a situation that feels impossible.
Yeah. Which seems impossible to me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. I feel like that's like taking a kid who's having a panic attack and like sitting him down at a desk in an empty room and saying like, you need to sit here and be quiet.
Yeah, but at the same time, and I think we're going to start to go into why I don't like it.
Perfect. Keeping us on track as usual.
Because I feel like I have come to a place where I'm able to use some of these skills, not consistently. I'm not perfect. Mention that.
What does that even look like? For you?
I don't know, but I mean, like the specific thing I think of is when I first got panic attacks. They were so debilitating, and recently responded to another Peach friend, the defunct social media that we met on, and who mentioned getting a panic, like just waking up in the middle of the night with a panic attack, which is generally, 9 times out of 10, that's how mine came on.
Wow, that's terrifying to think about.
And that was wild because I'd never heard anybody else really that got them like that. And that was even something when I told people, like professionals about getting panic attacks, then that's the first thing they always want to know. Like, is it certain situations that bring it on and stuff like that? I'm like, usually I just wake up in the middle of the night and it's there. And they're just sort of kind of floored, like, oh, I don't know what to say about that.
Wow.
But yeah, going back to the kind of DBT type ideas is obviously I have gotten something out of it because in the beginning, I just would have been a wreck then for the entire night until, eventually I got prescribed meds to help with it. And those would eventually bring me down. And that was like, that was it. That's the only way it was going to be resolved, or else I would just keep going like that forever.
Yeah.
And I know, I get them way, way less, thankfully, like that. And also, like, somehow along the way, I just learned what it was, and learning, like, feeling like this means I'm having a panic attack. It does not mean that I'm about to die. And just being able to kind of like repeat those things and somehow sort of calm myself, like that's worked a few times. That's where I feel it's just kind of like, I don't know. So this is what I don't like about DBT, is because I feel like every time I've been in, a DBT class or therapists have pushed it, it feels like it is a class. It's very much, it's like homework. They always have worksheets about it. And
well, yeah, when I was reading through my binders, I was like, what can I share to the podcast? And honestly, all of it was too boring.
Exactly. Honestly, that's one of the reasons why I've always hated it, is because when I've been in inpatient treatment, and they'll usually have different therapy groups that have different like themes and subjects. And if there's a DBT one, it feels like sitting through the most boring lecture that you've ever had.
Yeah. So when I went to residential, I got a big binder, and I got a bunch of like dividers with labels on them for each therapy class because these classes, these groups give you handouts, like paper handouts. They love printing stuff. And so I would have all of my classes with their own little section. I don't know why it wasn't a class, but it felt like it.
No, but it does feel like it. Yeah.
And
I was right there with you.
The DBT folder is the thickest.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like for me having like feeling like I've managed to partially gain some of the skills. 10% of that maybe came from being lectured and doing handouts and listening to people talk about it and saying, and, writing out scenarios to practice in your fake life. Like, if this happens, I will do blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's a lot of thinking about yourself thinking about things.
But I felt, like I said, that to me felt like that was 10% of it. 90% of it was just my brain managing to make the connections. So I feel like it's the exact opposite of a school and a class to really get it and to be able to make it work for you. And so that's why I hate it.
But you mentioned another type of therapy, which is RODBT.
Did you look up stuff about it?
Well, yeah, I have. Well, this is one of the things that I was like, I don't know if I want to share. It's so boring.
Because I forgot I talked about it.
I haven't. Okay, so I have another definition on my therapy terms page. I'm so scholarly, even when I'm in the hospital. So RODBT, radically open dialectical behavioral therapy, focused on those with excessive control issues. Oh, and that's all I wrote.
Oh.
Wait, here's the folder. Okay. Radical openness worksheet 10.A. Flexible mind is... okay, yeah, I don't want to... Because when you get there, like, they go through a cycle. Each group has, like, 12 weeks in the material, and then they start over.
Yes.
And so you might be there so long you go through the same group, like, twice. Or you might get there in the middle of it, which I did, which is why I don't have, like, a definition or anything.
But, up until... The most recent time, no one had discussed RODBT. It had always been just the standard DBT stuff every week.
But I guess the radically open part, it's more like dealing with the external world and those around you rather than just focusing on yourself. Like acknowledging that there's other people and that like you have to have boundaries and there's, accountability.
Yeah, that it's... I think you hit on it saying that it's for, very internally controlled people. That it's... Oh,
God.
That it's kind of... yeah.
Wait, Lauren, I'm going to give you a quiz, okay?
Uh-oh.
RODBT Fatalistic Mind Survey.
Ooh, do I have a fatalistic mind?
Listeners, play along. Elevator music or game show music.
Yeah.
Have you had thoughts that others must be right, that you are to blame, that everything is your fault, or that nothing you ever do is right?
Probably.
How often do you say to yourself, why bother? Nothing will ever change. Nothing really matters.
Oh, do I need to give you, like, a rough estimate per day?
What was the last time it happened?
I don't know, probably this afternoon.
How often do you shut down, numb out, or lose all your energy?
Oh, God. Also, if nothing else... I
don't know why I'm saying it in such an upbeat voice.
At least nightly.
Yes. Do you pout or deliberately go quiet, silent treatment, when things don't go your way?
Not as often as the other ones, but I'm not going to say no.
We're prone.
Yeah.
We're prone. We're liable. Do you ever disagree with someone, then suddenly agree? Maybe saying something like, fine, you're right, without explanation.
Yes, but I don't actually agree. Because I immediately hate myself afterwards because I'm like, why did you just agree with them just to, like... You...
It's the fight or flight, whatever. You're just trying to, like, appease them so they don't keep attacking you.
I'm like, why do I just say things to make people happy? I don't believe it.
We are not alone when we say that that's normal.
Yeah.
When have you found yourself thinking everything will be fine despite repeated feedback that there is a serious problem that needs attending to?
Anytime it deals with my own health.
Oh. And then there's a quote that I wrote. Welcome despair, anxiety, and hopelessness as teachers, not enemies. Sorry, I'm gonna stop this now. Wait, RODPT nuggets?
Nuggets?
I don't know. All right, the binder is shut. Well, we were talking about acceptance last week.
Yeah.
I feel like there was something else I was going to say about that. I just shut the binder. I'm not going to open my journal right away, but
Okay.
I did have a lot in my journal about acceptance and the counterpart of acceptance, which is denial, which we can talk about that a little more this week if you want, because...
Yeah, we didn't touch on that as much.
Yeah, so I am in a lot of denial all the time.
Same.
I know. And it's not that we don't have the intelligence, the logic, whatever, to understand that we need to stop doing something, or that it's like,
right.
We're smart people.
It's this weird way that you can kind of... I'm starting to hate myself because I'm pulling out so much therapy speak, but I was just going to say it's this weird way that you can hold both.
Dialectical.
Yes.
We've cracked it.
Yes, it's like we are aware of the things we're doing, but there's kind of like this opposite side of your brain that's just like screaming that really wants you to believe, but not for me.
And we don't want to be reasoned with.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it can get really embarrassing. But I wrote a quote in my journal that I wanted to share now, which is, I'm not ready to be wrong.
Ooh.
And at the time I was referring to, I had gotten out of treatment at this point, and I was significantly heavier than when I went in. And I was talking about wanting to lose weight and how, like, they don't understand that, like, going back to the weight I'm used to is actually better for my mental health. And
right, of course.
And also I'm abusing Benadryl again and DXM, but it's okay because I'm doing so good in my eating disorder recovery. And, you know, all this stuff. And if it sounds familiar, listener, it's because I was probably saying it on the podcast last week or something. Do I exaggerate?
Just like, maybe last week. I don't know.
I don't know. But just so much denial. It's like, I know that I'm wrong, but I'm not ready to be wrong. I'm not ready to surrender, to accept this.
I mean, something that I have argued about for like years and years, and I feel like I still haven't totally let go of this, is the idea that it's not as bad for me to get to a lower weight because my body is built differently and I look bigger than other people at different weights and my body functions better than other people might.
There's so many excuses.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about how I expressed these concerns to my treatment team, as one does when you follow all the rules. And they were like, why would you judge your body at any weight, like for changing shape? And stuff like that, that's just like, well, duh, like, I know.
Okay, good, because that's exactly what I was thinking when you said that. Like, do you know why she's talking to you? Hello.
And honestly, I mean, disappointingly, that's a common experience I've had with eating disorder treatment teams. They give you a lot of platitudes and like common sense advice that you can find on Reddit.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah. Anyway.
Like the number of times that people have told me some things where I've just wanted to scream, like, I know that, I just don't want to believe it.
Yeah. Not to get really personal really fast, but I am kind of still in denial about my eating disorder. Like this week, especially being sober from so much, I realized like, oh, I am very much eating disordered and I don't have any interest in stopping, at least, or I just can't right now. And that's an excuse I use. Like, oh, I just have too much going on. I just can't.
Yeah, I feel like when you're dealing with several things at once, it is a really easy thing to do. Like if one thing is going better, you know, like you haven't used Benadryl in however many days, then it's just saying like, well, I'm doing this and that's really hard. So I should be allowed to do my other things.
And don't get me wrong, like I can't believe that I haven't picked up Benadryl again.
No,
like,
that's amazing. I'm so impressed with you. Yes.
The psychiatrist was so proud of me.
Yay.
He was like, I don't think he believed me at first. He was like,
Oh.
oh really? But yeah, I have not been doing good, and like I don't know.
Well, if you want one of my stories that I had to tell,
yes,
because I think this relates pretty well, because it goes in with denial, and it actually is something that I agreed to process for the first time with the therapist that first brought up RODBT to me.
Oh my God.
And I can't remember if I've talked about, I mean, I'm sure I've at least mentioned that it happened on the podcast, but I don't know how much I've gone into it, which is when I was about 28, 29, I was like late 20s because I hadn't been in Chicago that long. I went out with two friends to see a band and I got drugged.
Holy shit.
Yeah. The thing is, the whole story of it is I started acting, basically I started acting like I was drunk off my fucking ass.
Wow. Who are you with? How close were the friends you were with?
One was a coworker. We were pretty good friends, and another one was her friend, so I didn't know him that well.
Okay. Do you know where it happened?
So I have an idea because we were at a club and, we were watching a band. So there was like a waitress coming around delivering people's drinks. After the entire night happened, there was just this picture in my mind of like, I remember seeing that waitress with her tray just like full of drinks. I had a vodka cranberry, so it's going to be a pink drink. And I just remembered happening to see that, she probably had like multiple tables drinks on her tray, and she had at least 3 that looked like they could have been mine.
Wait, so you think you were drugged by accident?
Yeah. Because, I mean, you'll find out when I tell you the rest of the story why.
God.
Because I just got this picture in my mind. I was like, I remember seeing her across the room, and I remember seeing that tray, and she set it down on an empty table. She turned around, turned her back to it to make change. And I was just like, I bet that was meant for somebody else. Because what ended up happening is my friend saw I was not doing well, and she told me the next day that she's like, I took you into the bathroom. And I said, because she just thought that I was really drunk or something. And she said, like, Lauren, I think that you need to go home. And she said she was really nervous about it because obviously if you tell someone that's really drunk, they usually get belligerent and are like, no, I'm fine.
I don't know anything about that.
But she said what I actually did is looked at her and said, yeah, I think so too. And
wow, responsible.
And so her and her friend got me a taxi, got me downstairs, got me into the taxi. I woke up in the ER with an IV in my arm.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wait, what happened in between getting in the taxi and waking up?
I don't know, because when I talked to her afterwards, because I felt like, how did you just let me go? I didn't.
Wait, they weren't with you?
No.
When you blacked out?
No, because that happened in the taxi, because that's what she told me. Is she's like, you were having coherent conversations with us. You went down and you told the taxi driver your address. We thought that you were going to be fine. And I'm like, I don't remember that conversation in the bathroom with you. I don't remember walking down the stairs, getting in the taxi. None of that is in my brain.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Uh-huh. But going back to what we were saying about, like denial and things like that, I feel like I'd always brush that off because there's no reason for me to think anything happened to me. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was a mistake. It was meant for somebody else. So I could just tell myself all this time that it's just like, well, I mean, it's not, like I got drugged and I got raped. I'm just kind of like, it's just a thing that happened and it sucked. And yeah, so for the first time a year or so ago, I was like, finally processed, like, but that was a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's extremely traumatizing, especially when you don't remember.
Yeah, that's to this day, the scariest part to me is my friend telling me, like, calm conversations I had with her. And I was like, those are not in my brain.
Holy shit. I mean, I have a story kind of like that I don't think I've told on the podcast before. If we're talking about denial, our denial moments, it's a blackout story.
Mm-hmm.
I had the day off from Starbucks and...
Oh yeah, sorry. I was going to say that was the other thing that clued me in to that story is that I didn't even finish my second drink because I was already like feeling bad. So I'm just like, I kept saying that I was just like trashed and that must have been it. It's like, no.
No.
Anyway.
That is terrifying.
So sorry to interrupt.
No.
I'm kind of sensitive about that because that's what I feel like people automatically think like, no, she just really didn't know how much she drank.
No, I mean, I'm terrified when I hear that because, I mean, I know you. And also, like, as an anxious person, I feel like it's almost worse when it's not meant for you because you're like, well, this could happen.
Exactly.
Oh, no. And I've never been through that experience, so maybe I shouldn't even be talking about it. But it's just...
No, you've got it spot on. Like, what's scary about it?
Be safe out there, folks.
Yeah. Watch your drinks.
Watch your drinks. Maybe make sure your friends get home. Like, see them home if you can.
If your friends are acting like that, there might be more going on than you think.
Oh, yeah, but my story.
Yes.
It was a beautiful Seattle spring day. The mountain was super clear. It was just gorgeous. And a friend of a friend that I had never hung out with one-on-one before texted me. I met her at a party and she texted me to ask if I wanted to go boating with her and a couple other friends. And they all these people were friends in common with my friend. So
okay.
And so I said, yeah, I don't have anything going on. And so I stopped at the convenience store and I picked up a 6-pack of peach IPA.
Okay.
And I remember what kind it was because I took a picture of it and I posted it on Peach.
Okay.
And we were just out on the boat for hours, and it was a guy who owned the boat, and then it was this other girl, and she and my friend of a friend were both like young professionals, and the guy was like a business owner or something, and they were all just talking about all the business stuff they were doing, and I was just sitting there in the background sipping my beers and like feeling like I wasn't able to contribute anything because I'm working at Starbucks.
Yeah.
And I hated, at the time, like, I still do hate talking about what I do for money, like we talked about on that episode. But back then it was even worse. I had so much shame about working in the service industry, which is ridiculous to me now.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm like, for one thing, that's the hardest job there is.
Well, it's a needed job.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. And, the pay was okay. And I had health insurance and they paid for my college. Like,
yeah, Starbucks is always known for at least taking care of their employees. So.
Well, fuck Starbucks.
Yeah, right. Okay.
On the record.
I don't go there, but I have heard that they, like, people that work there have gotten...
You should boycott them, and they are not the company they used to be as someone who worked there from 2013 to 2019. Anyway. Don't get me talking about Starbucks.
Okay.
But yeah, I had a lot of shame about that, and I didn't feel interesting. I didn't feel like a real person. Yeah. I've always kind of been an observer.
I know that feeling.
You can get drunk really fast when you're just observing, as it turns out. So, like, I drank the entire 6-pack. They were very strong IPAs. We got off the boat. I still remember at this point, we went to this Mexican restaurant in Ballard. I know one of our listeners lives there.
Okay.
And I got nachos, which I was planning to purge. And we were drinking tequila shots or something.
Oh, jeez.
At some point, we went downstairs to this like curiosity shop. And then I remember waking up on my couch in Seattle the next morning. My shoes were on the floor. My keys were on the floor. My phone was everything was scattered like in a trail from the door. And the door was locked. Okay. And I have no idea how I got back home. Yikes. I don't know. And I didn't have any Uber charges. The buses weren't running. I mean, I can only imagine someone took pity on me and drove me back. But like, I don't fucking know. And
you don't know to this day?
To this day.
Holy shit.
I don't know. And I'm still like Instagram friends with some of the people. Well, yeah, one of the girls. And I've never asked her about it. I'm kind of afraid to.
Yeah.
And
I understand.
I kept drinking after that for like 2 more months because I was in so much denial. Like, that is, if you black out to begin with, that's a huge red flag. Yeah. That you need help. But like, to black out regularly,
you literally don't know how you got home.
Yeah. You are putting yourself in danger. And it is an emergency and you do need help.
Yes.
I'm just like screaming at my past self at this point.
Right. Like, why didn't you see it? That's why we're talking about this.
Yeah. What do you think you're currently in denial about since I shared mine? And that's the pickle pull, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, go and answer our pickle poll. The question is, what are you in denial about? And what would it take to find acceptance? Is that how you phrased it?
It basically was, what are you in denial about? And some sort of counterpoint. What would it take for you to accept it, I think?
Yes.
Okay.
You have 1 week.
Yeah.
To send in your comments and voicemails. Anyway. What are you in denial about?
Well, I'm in denial about these things. So I immediately thought of them as like, is that really something I'm in denial about?
Right?
Yes. Like, it is so hard.
I don't know if we can objectively answer these for ourselves.
I know. Because it was like,
what if I tell you what you're in denial about and you tell me what I'm in denial about?
Ooh, I wish I had.
Is that too scary?
It's scary, but I want to know what you say, and I don't know what I'll say to you.
Oh, I need to think about this.
I know.
Elevator music? I'm going to stop the recording. Don't let me forget to start it again.
Okay.
I remembered. Da, da, da. Could you think of anything?
I did.
Oh my god.
Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I felt like you have been in denial about the Benadryl use. And I think,
totally.
Yeah. And I felt like every week when you would talk about it, just because, as you said, it's been so much worse. And I feel like that's always a hard one, to come to terms with when, like, things have been so much worse. And it's like, yeah, but it's still bad. So, and I thought about that and I was like, I'm not even sure. You could still be in a little denial about that just because of that whole thing of telling yourself, but it was worse.
I'm in the shallow end, but I'm still in the pool.
Yeah. I was like, don't get me wrong. I am mega proud of you for not having gone back. But I was like, I could see you still kind of thinking like, yeah, okay, but it wasn't really as bad this time. And the other one is, I feel like you're pretty good at knowing, like you've come miles since I've met you. Like, I feel like you're much better at understanding like your current situation, like things that aren't good for you, things that you probably need help on and everything like that. But I feel like sometimes maybe not.
Just say it.
This is making me uncomfortable because I don't want to make you mad.
Well, this is the end of the episode, so we can run away after this.
Okay. But I was like, sometimes maybe even though you know these things and you need help with this stuff, that it's like you might have to do the hard stuff anyway. Like, it sucks because we've talked and complained about this. Like, a lot of this is like our shitty healthcare system and things like that. But it's just kind of like, even though you understand that, you're having a hard time functioning and you need help with these issues, it just might come to the point where you got to kind of get through it anyways, even though you don't feel capable.
I mean, I agree with you, first of all. I was just telling someone the other day, I feel entitled. I think we were talking about emotional intelligence and like how I feel like a teen in crisis and I don't want to be responsible. Yeah. And yeah, I do feel kind of entitled. Like, people are still supposed to show me the answers and people are still supposed to take care of me. And like, yeah, that's great to have. But at the end of the day, it's just you. And if I don't work, then I'm just going to continue to suffer needlessly.
I feel like it's harder when you've actually like made the move and come to the conclusion like, yes, I need help. And then it's just like, so help me. And it's just kind of like, sometimes, unfortunately, that doesn't happen.
Me to me. So help me. I guess. Maybe if I'm a little nicer to myself.
Yeah.
Okay, so for you, Lauren, I kind of went down 2 trains of thought for this. Obviously, I think you are in denial still about like how much you want to lose weight and like go back to the eating disorder. But then I thought, well, no, you're not in denial about that. You know that's happening. Like you said, you're very self-aware. And then I thought, are you in denial that you could actually be in recovery, quote unquote? Are you in denial that you actually are within reach of a quote unquote normal life and it scares you?
That's interesting because I do agree with your first part. Like, that's the first thing I thought of for myself. If you said like, what are you in denial about? Then I'm just kind of like, yeah, that I like to say a lot of times, like, and it's the same sort of thing I told to you, that it's just kind of like, well, things aren't as bad.
Which also is great. We love it when things aren't as bad. If that's the best you can do, that's great. I hope tomorrow is not as bad as today, but it's still no excuse.
Yeah. And of course, to your second part, I don't know that I would believe that because, we hate the word recovery and recovered and all of that kind of bullshit, but thinking that it could be closer
Functional.
or
long-term functionality,
or more so than I ever thought I'd get to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A new stage in your journey. I couldn't say recovery.
I'm just pulling up because since Vicky couldn't be here, she gave some ideas of things to talk about. And one of the things is, what was it? Phrases and concepts from therapy that aggravate you, either because they're dumb or too simplistic or seem too hard. And that's what I thought of when we were saying all these things like, they're the journey and things like that. What her example was people that say like, stop shoulding on yourself.
Oh my God, my roommate literally said that yesterday to me. Holy shit, that's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
She's 54 and an AA person.
Okay.
Great for her, though. She's an inspiration, and I love her. I can't really think of any more therapy phrases off the top of my head, but I know there's a lot, and we tend to roll our eyes.
Yeah, this is what I hadn't really heard. Her other one was, she said, when they say to make like a bad habit or a destructing coping mechanism a non-option.
Play the tape forward.
That one I've heard.
Yeah.
Play the tape forward.
Keep your side of the street clean. No, now I'm just saying stereotypes.
Right.
They don't say that in eating disorder treatment. Keep your side of the table clean. Keep your side of the bathroom clean. Oh, man. Yeah, Vicky, thank you for those ideas. I hope that you liked this episode, and I hope that all of you listeners liked this episode. Yes. I think we've covered everything.
Yep. What's funny is we're going to have to do a part 3 because I thought we were going to tell more stories, and I had a whole bunch of them.
Well, you can tell another story.
I feel like it will get too long, and they don't fit in as well.
I always think that I have too much footage, and then I end up with like 40 minutes, and I'm like, wow, I thought that was longer. We can afford to go longer, or you can save it.
I feel like everything's fit so well in our themes.
I know. There wasn't really
Ow. Sorry, if you heard that, I just banged my elbow on my desk.
Are you in pain?
No, it's not too bad.
Oh, I was going to say something about suffering.
Oh.
I think we're both in denial that we deserve to be happy and that we deserve to not suffer and that we just deserve things without suffering.
Yeah.
That we deserve things. So we're both in such bad denial about that. We talked about it last week.
I've said that, multiple times at this point. I hate feeling like I should deserve something.
Yeah. I could go on about what we're in denial in, but we'll have to talk about that when we play your answers. So
yes.
Go let us know what you think. Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard, don't forget to tell a friend about our podcast. You can direct them to picklesandvodka.substack.com where they can find our entire archive and also get access to our chat. We're on Instagram at Pickles and Vodka Podcast, Facebook.com/picklesandvodkapodcast, and YouTube.com/@picklesandvodkapodcast. My Instagram is @xtinajumper and Lauren is @LaurenAFH. We'll see you next week.